Hello and welcome to this video. Gareth here from tastytudes.com. Now, if you are completely new to Photoshop, you will soon come to realise that layers are the fundamental basis for any artwork created in Photoshop. The Layers panel is one of the most important panels in this program, and it's from this panel that you will coordinate your entire composition. In this tutorial, we are going to take a closer look at layers in Photoshop. In a previous episode, I demonstrated how to create a custom workspace. If you have not seen that episode, the workspace is basically a panel setup here in Photoshop. For this tutorial, we will be using this workspace, and along the way, we will be referencing the Layers panel. If you don't have the Layers panel visible, you can either skip to the previous video and learn how I set up this workspace, or simply come up to the top menu, select Window, and click Layers to activate your Layers panel if you do not see it. So here is my Layers panel over here on the right. So to follow along with this tutorial, you will need to open this document I have prepared especially for this video. This can be found in the Introduction folder in the Project folder. Now you can download this project folder for free. The download link is in the description. So with the project folder open, click Introduction, Layers, and open the Layers file inside, and you should have something that looks like this. Now we are going to be covering a lot in this video and in quite some depth. If you wish to skip ahead at any point in the video or back, you can do so quite simply. The topics covered in this video are listed in the description and in the course PDF, along with their times, so be sure to check that out. So here we can see we have an arrangement in the canvas area, and this is an example I'm going to use in order to demonstrate the principles of layers and how they work in the Layers panel. So here we can see we have a number of objects in the canvas area that make up this composition. We have some shapes and we have some type elements. Now if we look closely in the Layers panel over here on the right, we can see that each element that exists in the canvas area is represented by its own individual layer, which are all stacked on top of each other in rows. Each layer has a name to the right and an image thumbnail on the left to give us a quick preview as to what exists in the layer and what type of layer this is. The way Layers panel works is by stacking layers on top of each other in a hierarchy, quite like stacking sheets of paper on top of each other. Whichever layer is at the top of the layer stack is the layer which will have the most visibility, and the layer at the bottom will have the least visibility, hidden by any layer which happens to be above it. Now, there are many types of layers that can be created in your document. As you begin to create in Photoshop, you will find yourself dealing with various types of creative elements. Over the duration of this course, we are going to be dealing with a variety of different layer types. Layer types can be identified by the icons that feature on the layer in the Layers panel. If we look in the Layers panel here, we can see that in this document we have two types of layers. We have raster layers, and these are represented by thumbnails on the left, which displays the placement inside the doc. And we have type layers. These have the icon T on the left. You will need to pay close attention to these, as these will help indicate the contents of your document. In the Layers panel, you have the ability to filter by layer type. As you create in Photoshop, you will often create complex documents with many layers. At the top of the Layers panel, we have the layer types you can filter by. First is pixel layer. This is basically a raster layer. Next is adjustment layers. Next, type layer. Next, shape layer. And finally, smart object layers. So these are the types of layers that can be created in Photoshop. We will be learning all about these layers later in the course. Now, in the Layers panel, we have the ability to select layers individually with the mouse. As we select a layer, it will become highlighted, and that's how we identify which layer is currently selected. This is going to enable us to focus on particular layers in future and apply various effects and so on. But we're not going to go into that too much right now. So in Photoshop, the Layers panel works in a hierarchy structure top to bottom. So each element is treated separately on its own layer. Now if you wish to move a particular element in the canvas area around, we will need to use the Move tool. The Move tool is the top tool in the Tools menu over on the left. This is represented by a white arrow with a crosshair next to it. Depending on the particular layer you have selected in your Layers panel, you will be able to move the contents of the layer around. For example, I'm going to click the red circle layer in the Layers panel. Next, I'm going to come to the Move tool and click it to make sure I have it selected. Then I'm going to move my mouse cursor into the canvas area and click and drag to move the red circle around like so. So now nothing is moving apart from the contents of that layer. I'll quickly come up to Edit and click Undo to move it back into its original place. Next, I'll select the middle type layer in the Layers panel, the top layer, and with the Move tool active, I can click and drag this around like so to reposition should I wish. Again, we can see that we are only moving the contents of that layer around. So again, I'll quickly come up to Edit and click Undo to move it back into its original place. So to move objects around in the canvas area, we must first have the layer selected and use the Move tool. Now let's for a second look at this composition. We can see what looks like a red circle in the background. On top of that, we have an orange square. On top of that, a yellow square. On top of that, a green circle. And on top of that, we have some type. But if we look in the Layers panel, we can see that the layer structure does not reflect this. For example, the green circle, which appears to be above the yellow and orange square, is in fact below them in the Layers panel. If I click on the orange square layer in the Layers panel, then make sure I have the Move tool selected in the menu on the left, this being the top arrow icon, I can click and hold on the canvas area and drag the object around. We can see that it's actually behind the yellow square and on top of the green circle. And if we look in the Layers panel, we can see this. I'll quickly come up to Edit and click Undo to move that back into its original place. Now if I click on the green circle and move that around, we can see that it's actually behind the yellow and orange square, even though at a glance it appears to be on top of them. Again, I'll quickly come up to Edit, click Undo and put that back into place. Lastly, I'll select the type layer called Top in the Layers panel and move that around, and we can see that this is behind the green circle and yellow and orange square. And we can see this is true in the Layers panel. So remember, things are not always what they seem in the canvas area. You will always have to keep an eye on the Layers panel to understand the true structure of any composition. Now, should we wish to edit the structure of the layers in the artwork, this can be done quite simply by clicking and dragging a layer in the Layers panel. Let's say, for example, we want to bring the red circle to the top. In the Layers panel, we can click on the layer and drag it up like so. Wherever we release click, the layer will be placed in that position. If I continue to drag the layer into various positions in the Layers panel, we will see the layer on top, such as the type and the colored squares. So moving and altering the layer structure can be done quite simply. Now, if we look closely to the left of each layer in the Layers panel, we have these little icons that look like eyes. These icons represent the visibility of each layer in the Layers panel. For example, if I click on the green circle layer and click on this icon, the circle will disappear from the canvas area, and we can see the eye icon is gone. What I have done there is toggle the visibility of the layer. I have not deleted the element, I have simply made it disappear. In this instance, the icon is also removed, telling me that this layer is currently invisible. If I want the layer to reappear, I can simply click back on the visibility icon, the circle will appear in the canvas area, and the icon is back. So keep in mind, these little icons are used to toggle visibility of layers. Easy. Now, there is a crucial concept that should be known to all newcomers to Photoshop, and that is transparency. So currently, we can see in the canvas area all the creative objects that make up this composition. Now we have just seen how we can toggle the visibility of the layers. This time I'm going to start from the top and make my way down, toggling the visibility of each layer. So now I am all the way down to the white background layer, the last layer at the bottom of my layer structure. All the elements are currently invisible and all I can see is the white background. Now, if I finally toggle the visibility of the white background, I can see what appears to be a grid of grey and white squares. Now, in Photoshop, this represents transparency, basically nothing, empty space. So what does this mean, and why is it there? Well, for example, if I now toggle the visibility of the orange square layer back, we can see the grid appearing around the outside and inside of the square. This is Photoshop telling us that this area is transparent. If we also take a closer look at the thumbnails in the layer panel, we can see that around the coloured shapes we have the grid texture. Again, this is Photoshop telling us in those thumbnails that these elements are existing in transparent space. If we look at the white background, we can see that it's solid white covering the entire canvas area, compared to the green circle that is also solid but does not fill the entire canvas area. The area around it is transparent. If I toggle the visibility of the green circle layer, we now have the circle in the middle with the transparent area around them both. Now, having the transparency like this will enable us to export and save this image to use in other projects or creative media to retain transparency in and around the artwork, so it's not set on a white background. We will be learning more about this later in the course. So now I'm going to come and toggle the visibility of all the layers back on so we can see everything. Excellent. Now, as you create new layers in Photoshop, you may wish to rename them. To change the name of a layer, simply move your mouse cursor over the name in the Layers panel and double click. This will enable you to change the name like so. Easy. Now in Photoshop, we have the option to toggle the opacity of a layer, make it see-through. Currently, all the layers in my composition are set to 100% opacity. Now, for example, if I want to toggle the opacity of the red circle, first I need to select the layer in the Layers panel. And if I look closely up to the top right of the Layers panel, we have an option called opacity. Currently, we can see this is set to 100%. Now here I can do one of two things. Either I can click and type in the exact value I wish, or I can move my mouse cursor over the word opacity to the left, and notice the mouse cursor changed to a left and right arrow. Now if I click and drag to the left, I will begin to toggle the opacity. The value will change in the box, and the creative element on the canvas area will begin to fade away. So I'll toggle this down to around 50%, and now we can see the red circle is slightly lighter on the blue background. This time I'm going to select the green circle, but instead of clicking and dragging on the opacity, I'm going to click directly into the value box and type 70. This will set the opacity of this layer to 70%. Now notice that because this green is slightly transparent, it's blending into the red circle in the background and essentially creating the illusion of a new color tone. If I move the green circle to the edge of the red circle, we can see as you alter the opacity of the layers in Photoshop, you will allow the layer beneath to be seen through. So that is how you can toggle opacity on your layers in Photoshop. Now what you will come to learn as we progress through the course is that sometimes if we wish to create a new element in the composition, we will have to create a new layer. To create a new layer is quite simple, but first you will have to keep in mind which layer you currently have selected. Because when you create a new layer, it will be created immediately above the layer you have selected. For example, I'm going to select the yellow square layer in the Layers panel and create a new layer. Now I can either come to the bottom of the Layers panel and click the Add Layer icon, second from the right, or click up to the top right of the Layers panel and click the drop down, and here I can also click New Layer. In this instance, I'm just going to click the new layer icon at the bottom of the layers panel, second from the right, and upon click, a new layer will be created above the yellow square layer, which was previously created. By default, the layer will be called Layer 1. If you continue to create additional layers, the name convention will go up Layer 2, Layer 3, and so on. For this example, I'm going to double click on the name and call this New Empty Layer. Now, when you create a new layer in this way, the layer will be transparent, in other words, empty. If we look carefully in the thumbnail image of this layer in the layers panel, we can see it's filled with the grey and white square texture. This layer is now ready to create on. So that's how you can create a new layer in Photoshop. If you wish to remove or delete the layer, this can easily be done by selecting the layer and simply pressing the delete icon in the bottom right of the layers panel or backspace on your keyboard. In Photoshop, you can also lock layers. Should you place an element in your composition you do not want to accidentally change in future, you can simply apply a lock. To do this, first select the layer you wish to lock. For example, I want to lock the red circle layer, so in the layers panel, I'll first select the red circle layer. Up towards the top left on the layers panel, we have a series of icons. On the far right, we have a lock all icon. Upon click, we will now see a lock icon appear on the red circle layer, and if I try, for example, to move this red circle around with the move tool, I will not be able to do so, and I will get a message telling me this layer is locked. Should I wish to make further changes to this layer in future, then all I have to do is simply come into the layers panel, click on the lock icon on the specific layer, and that will release the lock. Easy. In Photoshop, you can also link layers together. Let's say you have separate layers in your layers panel that make up a particular creative group in your composition. For example, the yellow and orange squares in the composition are on two separate layers, but whenever I move the orange square, I want to keep the yellow square with it. So in the layers panel, if I select the yellow square layer, press and hold Shift on the keyboard and select the orange layer below, we will now have them both selected. By pressing and holding Shift on the keyboard, we can click and select multiple layers in the layers panel. With them both selected, I can right click on the mouse. From the menu that appears, I can select Link Layers. Upon click, we will now see the link icon on both layers in the layers panel. Now, if I simply click on one of the layers, for example the orange square, I no longer have the yellow square selected, though if I activate the move tool and click to move the orange square around in the canvas area, notice how the yellow square moves around with it. This is because they are now linked together. So to unlink the layers, simply click on one of the layers in the link, right click and select Unlinked Layers. Easy. This can be really useful when you begin to build complex compositions and wish to keep various layers together. Another feature in the layers panel, which is similar to the links, is groups. As you begin to create complex compositions in Photoshop, you may find yourself creating excessive amounts of layers in your layers panel. A useful feature to keep your layers organized in your layers panel is to use layer groups. So to create a group is very similar to creating a new layer. At the bottom of the layers panel, we have an icon, third from the right, called Create New Group. Also, if we click on the top right menu, we can choose New Group from here as well. Just like creating a new layer, we need to keep in mind which layer we have selected before creating the group, as the group will be created directly above. So, for example, I want to create a new group and I'm going to place all the shape elements from my composition inside it. So with the orange square layer selected, I'm going to come down to the bottom of the layers panel and click the Add New Layer Group icon. Upon click, we will see a new group appear in the layers panel, and by default, it's called Group 1. Now, just like with layers, we can double click on the name of the group and rename it. In this instance, I'm going to rename this group to Shapes. With the folder renamed, I'm going to begin to click and drag my shape layers into the folder like so. Now when I do this, you will notice something change. What you must remember with layer groups is as you drag your layers into them, the layer will automatically be placed at the bottom of the group. You may find as you drag in your layers, this is going to alter the layer structure you may intend. So once your layers are dragged into the group, you will need to reposition your layers inside the group to get the structure you're happy with. Notice on the layer group, on the left you have a toggle. This will allow you to toggle the visibility of the layer group contents like so. This will help you simplify your layer structure at a glance. Now once your layers are contained inside a group folder, just like with linking layers, if I now click the folder layer in the layers panel, with the move tool active, I can now move the entire contents of the folder around in one go, like so. Now if I wish to move a particular layer inside the group, I can simply click the individual layer inside the group and move it around, like so. Simple. If I toggle the visibility of the group folder, I will also be able to toggle the visibility of the entire group's contents, like so. Just like with layers, you can also click and move your groups around in the layers panel should you wish to alter the layer structure. So next, I'm going to create a new layer group. I'm going to call this group type, and I'm going to drag in the type layers into the folder. Then I'm going to create a new folder and call this background, and drag in the white background. So now I have 3 groups containing specific elements of my composition arranged in the correct structure like so. Nice and neat. So using layer folders can be really useful for housekeeping, streamlining your layer structure and having control of the elements in your composition. Now the last thing I want to demonstrate in this tutorial is layer colors. Something that was brought into more recent versions of Photoshop is the ability to color your layers. Now this again can be really handy to organize your layers. As you build lots and lots of layers in your layers panel, it can begin to seem monotonous to the eye. The ability to color your layers and groups helps you visually separate your groups. So here I have 3 groups. Now if I select the top group and right click, towards the bottom we have some colors we can assign to the group. In this example I'm going to select red. Upon click we will see the red is now assigned to the type group. Next I'm going to click on the shapes folder, right click and assign a yellow color. Next I'm going to select the background folder, right click and assign a violet color. So now at a glance we can see 3 clearly distinguishable folders, and if I toggle down each folder like so, we can see that the layers within the groups have also been assigned the colors. So in this instance, the colors are helping to identify which group they belong to. If I want to assign a different color to a layer within a group, all I need to do is select the layer, right click and select a new color. Easy. So that is an introduction to the layers panel in Adobe Photoshop. In the next video, I'm going to discuss a few common file types you will need to be aware of as you begin to use Photoshop. So see you in the next video.